Watch this.
A big portion of Idaho is back under crisis standards of care because of the coronavirus. We were told this was coming, but it's different during this peak of the pandemic. Public records requests, part of serving the public. But yet another Idaho politician is being sued for not fulfilling a request. How do you show what allegedly doesn't exist? Oh, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. Well, in just a moment, it's going to be 5 o'clock here in the southern part of the 208. Cracking a beer? Well, no better way to celebrate the birth of the beer can, except there's one Idahoan who has done it 1 or 11,000 better. Do you think your staff, this hospital, can do that again?
I don't think we can do it the same way we did during the Delta surge. I don't think that we will have the staffing capacity to increase our ICU beds and our just COVID ward beds by as huge a volume as we did during the Delta surge.
And that would make it worse.
Right, because we would have to potentially turn patients away, and we never want to do that.
That was Dr. Megan McInerney talking to us 2 weeks ago about the possibility of going back into crisis standards of care. As the director of the intensive care unit at St. Alphonsus Regional Medical Center in Boise, she didn't think her staff and her hospital could handle another intense wave of COVID cases, at least not the same way as you just heard. By the way, we are less than 3 months removed from when Dr. McInerney told us her worst moment of the pandemic was last fall, when we were in the middle of Idaho's first ever declaration of crisis standards of care. Back in October, they had 2 dedicated COVID floors at the hospital. They had increased their ICU capacity by 8 more beds, and every one was filled, mostly with COVID patients. She told us there were moments when she thought, you can't keep doing this. Well, luckily, by Thanksgiving, they got the break they needed for about 2 months, because St. Alphonsus, they're the hospital that asked the Department of Health and Welfare to activate crisis standards of care again last week, and they were granted that today. Andrew Bartline is here with us now to help explain why we are back in crisis standards of care for a big chunk of the state. Andrew?
Yeah, well, it's going to apply in 3 health districts. There's the Central District Health Region, the Southwest District Health Region, and the South Central Public Health District region. We should have a graphic that we can throw up right now to kind of show what part of the state that's in. It's in the Southwest area. Essentially what that means is the goal for healthcare system is to provide care for as many people as possible, save as many lives as possible. To do this, guidelines can change and the care will change in emergency or disaster situations. So expectations for care should change as well. Someone may not get to the hospital and get the care that they need because maybe no beds are available. They might have to wait, might have to go to another hospital. It's also possible you could receive care in repurposed rooms. We heard from hospital systems during that last peak at the Delta surge, Brian, that some storage rooms were turned into a place where they were housing patients in beds, and crisis standards of care in that Delta wave was very difficult for our hospital system, as we know.
Okay, so we know that during the last crisis standards of care situation, there was a shortage of hospital staff because there were so many patients coming in. This time around, though, it's a little bit different. It still has to do with staffing, but there's another element to this too, right?
Yeah, so last time I talked with Dr. Nemerson at St. Alphonsus, as you mentioned, the hospital system that requested to go into crisis standards of care, he said that they employ more people at St. Alphonsus than they ever have. That was during the Delta wave. But there are so many people with Omicron coming down with it. There's hospital staff that can't work. So they may be employed at the hospital, but you can't go to work and do your job if you're sick yourself. So that's a piece of it. The other part to this is there's a big blood shortage right now. I talked with the American Red Cross today. They say we are amid the biggest blood shortage in the past decade. So it's difficult for these hospital systems that say someone comes in and they need a blood transfusion. There's a big car wreck, something along those lines. They may not have the resources, the blood they need, let alone the staff that they need to perform what people might need to be done.
Okay, so when it comes to that, the blood shortage and stuff, what can be done? Obviously, this is the time of year when they're asking more people to donate blood, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it is. They just need to replenish what they're missing. When I talked with the American Red Cross today, it sounds like throughout the pandemic, they're 10% less, or 10% below what they would typically see in donations. They say January is a difficult time of year anyway because it is typically flu season, it's typically cold season, but along with the pandemic, they're just not getting the donations that they need.
Okay, so we heard Dr. McInerney mention this, that there's a possibility that they could be turning patients away. Is that a real possibility? You mentioned, diverted to other hospitals. I mean, that's a big deal if you're in crisis, if you need crisis or critical care, I should say.
Yeah, and just to put into perspective, like how realistic this could potentially be, we talked with the South Central Public Health District earlier today. There are no ICU beds available in that Magic Valley region. That's in the center-southern part of the state. And according to Health and Welfare's website, ventilators or ICU beds could be rationed for those that are most likely to survive. So this is a very realistic possibility. This isn't a story I covered. I know you touched on it, Brian. There's a woman in North Idaho, I believe, the Lewiston area. There's an obituary that says she was waiting for a bed to open up. So it's not like she was turned away,
right,
but she had to wait her turn. And I believe, there's an obituary, I don't think she made it.
Yeah, she had to wait 20 hours for a bed, and there wasn't one available. And again, it's worth pointing out, this is not statewide like it was 3 months ago, and it's not even every hospital in these districts. I spoke with St. Luke's this afternoon, and they are not operating under crisis standards of care. This declaration kind of gives hospitals the option to do that.
Yeah, and when we talked with South Central Public Health District as well, there are 5 hospital systems in that region. It sounds like none of those hospital systems in the region need to be operating in crisis standards of care right now. They do have the option if they need to, and it sounds like they're close. Their staffing's on the brink. We should get more details about this tomorrow. When I reached out to the other regions, also reached out to St. Alphonsus today, they say that during the regularly scheduled media briefing on Tuesday, we should get these answers from Health and Welfare about some of the deeper nuance of where we're at, Brian.
All right. Great explanation. Thank you very much, Andrew. Another Idaho politician looks like they'll end up in court after not fulfilling a public records request. A new lawsuit filed against Representative Priscilla Giddings, claiming she violated the state's public record laws. You may remember this happened with Lieutenant Governor Janice McGeachin last summer. And this isn't related to that situation, although it was happening about the same time. The request for documents stems from what happened during an ethics hearing into then Representative Aaron Von Ellinger's alleged rape of a State House staffer, and the subsequent ethics hearing into Representative Giddings on how she handled herself during Von Ellinger's ethics hearing. I know there's a lot of layers there and it needs some explaining, which is why Joe Paris is here to dive into the lawsuit claiming Giddings didn't share those public documents and why Giddings says she's done nothing wrong.
Court records show a new lawsuit filed against Idaho Representative Priscilla Giddings alleging violations of Idaho's public record laws. The suit is filed by attorney Erica Birch, whose firm has worked on behalf of Jane Doe, the legislative intern who accused now former lawmaker Aaron Von Ellinger of raping her in early 2021. Court records show that Birch has been trying to get public records from Representative Giddings concerning her communications with Aaron Von Ellinger. Through 2021, Birch requested any written or electronic communications between Representative Giddings and Von Ellinger regarding Jane Doe, the ethics hearing into Von Ellinger's alleged actions, and the Ethics Committee complaint and hearing from March 9, 2021 onward. As the ethics investigation into Von Ellinger was underway, Representative Giddings shared an article link that contained Jane Doe's real name, picture, and personal details. The link was shared to Giddings' Facebook page, and she also sent it out to her legislative newsletter mailing list. Now, those actions were called into question, and Giddings faced her own ethics investigation in the fall of 2021. The ethics panel told Giddings that they were reacting not to just Giddings' post, but to her dishonesty when testifying about what had happened. In an April ethics hearing for Von Ellinger, Giddings denied sharing Jane Doe's name online. Minutes later, though, another lawmaker on the ethics committee pulled up the post from her Facebook and showed everyone during the hearing. The new lawsuit lays out a timeline of communication between Birch and Giddings from August 2021 through the end of the year. Emails included in court records show that Birch requested communications between Giddings and Von Ellinger, with Giddings responding to the initial request saying, quote, "My office does not have any public record related to your request that isn't already public. I have asked the Legislative Service Office to search their database as well. My office considers this request closed. Best regards, Representative Giddings." Email records show that Birch responded to Giddings, making the request again, saying in part, quote, "I'm not sure what you mean by you don't have any public records that aren't already public." She goes on to include the Idaho Public Records Act code, saying Giddings must produce requested records. Birch, in another email in December, again asked for the requested records. She wrote in part, quote, "We would like to avoid initiating a lawsuit." There was no response from Giddings, so in January, a suit was filed.
And I just heard back from Representative Giddings a very short time ago. She wrote to me and she says she's calling this lawsuit against her a nuisance lawsuit. And she sent me a statement that says in part the following. She says, quote, "This lawsuit is over a public records request for records that don't exist. The Legislative Services Office even searched all my files and found nothing related to their request. The leftist lawyer is clearly fishing for more information in an attempt to get a huge payout. She finishes her statement saying, "Classic harassment tactics, but I am afraid it's par for the course." Again, Representative Giddings is running for lieutenant governor right now, Brian, so there has been a conversation last year into this year from Representative Giddings saying that she feels she's being targeted as a part of her campaign. She singled out certain members of House leadership over on the Republican Party side. When talking to them, Brian, they assure me that this has nothing to do with politics in the race for the lieutenant governor, but everyone entitled to their own opinion.
All right, could this documents, or these documents don't exist, could be, just kind of clarified by saying there's private communications versus public communications?
Yeah, so public communications as an elected official or someone who's working in public office, you can ask for the communications from their public email or cell phone. But Brian, if they have private communications that's not a state email or a state cell phone, those are not really part of Public Records Act. So it's possible for a politician to communicate, I guess, off public record. It's kind of a gray area, though, and it can get very confusing.
Totally understandable. All right, thank you very much, Joe. Idaho's budget surplus is breaking the bank, which is why lawmakers want to give Idahoans a break when it comes to income taxes. How does what you pay for in sales tax play into that? We're answering another viewer question. Maybe you have a question. Well, now's your chance to send it to us. Get involved with the 208 by texting us your questions, your comments, your compliments, and your complaints. 208-321-5614. That's the number. Just make sure to include your name and the hashtag the 208.
I'm so grateful for all of you that participate in our Idaho Weather Watchers Facebook group, because there were a lot of pictures over the weekend of sunshine. People that were able to get out of the valley, head up in elevation, and get above that stratus deck that's covering us here in valley locations throughout the Snake River Plain. High pressure ridge still in control, so no changes here from what we've seen over the last several days. However, there is a little bit of snow headed to parts of central Idaho and down through south central Idaho, particularly through the Magic Valley overnight tonight. It could amount to a coating to a quick inch of snow, so please use caution for those areas around Twin Falls. For us here in southwest Idaho, though, for the Treasure Valley, we do stay dry tonight and through the next several days. So more of the same on the way as we take a look at the next 7 days, although I'm a little bit more encouraged that perhaps we can break apart the clouds for some sunshine through the next few days as well. You can always find a forecast at ktvb.com.
We were asked a question last week that had to do with the tax rebate bill, because the state collected enough revenue in 2021 to give Idaho the largest budget surplus ever, $1.9 billion. Lawmakers, their first move was to give a chunk of that money back to the tune of about $600 million. House Bill 436 passed the House with a 57-13 vote. Now, there's two parts to this bill. The $350 million one-time rebate, giving pretty much every Idahoan who filed taxes $75 back. Then there's the $251 million in ongoing tax relief that starts next year. Reductions, the bill explains, that will be partially offset by $94 million a year from the Tax Relief Fund. The Tax Relief Fund was set up in 2019 to collect all sales taxes paid on online purchases, which prompted Tom in Caldwell to ask this: How much of this surplus comes from internet sales tax? If consumers are the ones who created this surplus, shouldn't they get some of this relief instead of rich people? This bill has been dubbed by Democratic opponents as the reverse Robin Hood bill, taking from the lower classes and giving it back to the rich in the form of tax breaks. Now, maybe if we answer the first part of Tom's question, it might help answer the second part. According to the Idaho Tax Commission, fiscal year 2021 saw Idaho pull in more than $2.5 billion in sales use tax, a 20% increase from the year before. So we asked the Idaho Tax Commission how much of that income came from the internet sales side of it. We were told they don't separate and track revenue received from internet sales specifically. However, they do break down sales tax that's collected by out-of-state sellers and marketplace facilitators. This is the money that goes into the tax relief fund, they say, and many of the sales are online. The amount we collected from out-of-state sellers and marketplace facilitators in fiscal year 2021 was $135.9 million. So about 5.5% of Idaho's sales tax income. Not a significant amount. However, how sales tax works in Idaho, if you buy something at a brick and mortar store and are charged like 6%, that 6% sales tax, 11.5% of that 6% goes back to cities and counties to help pay for things like the sheriff, the DMV, city county services, stuff like that. The other 88.5% goes to the general fund. You buy something that costs $10, for example. You're paying $10.60 for it, right? Of that 60 cents, 7 cents would stay local, I should say. The other 53 then goes to the general fund. That's how it breaks down. Buy something online, all of that 60 cents goes to the tax relief fund. So to answer your question, Tom, buying online, and that money doesn't go to support cities and counties, that's things everyone uses, right? But if this bill becomes law, it will be used to fund tax breaks for anyone making more than $1,000 a year. On January 24th, 1935, the term "a can of beer" became a staple of our American lexicon. That's the day the Gottfried Kruger Brewing Company of Newark, New Jersey, first offered its finest beer and cream ale in a 12-ounce tin can. Thousands were handed out in a promotional campaign just to see if it would work. Well, it did, obviously. And after a delay in production during World War II, for obvious reasons, the cans became aluminum in 1958. Production picked up back in 1962, and by 1969, sales of canned beer outdid bottles for the very first time. Well, today marks the 87th anniversary of that first beer can. So to celebrate, we thought we'd take you back to the spring of 2018 and take you inside what is likely the largest collection of beer cans in Idaho in today's rusty 208 redial. Out back, behind his rather modest house in Eagle, Joe Prynn, a modest man.
There was a pole barn here, so I kind of just enclosed it.
With a modest affinity for malted beverages.
Oh yeah, just in case I forget about this.
Has a rather
welcome to Beervana
immodest collection in his outbuilding.
See, I told you you'd say that.
Wow. Joe says he's stockpiled and stacked somewhere near 11,000 beer cans. That's a lot of lagers, an abundance of ales, and a Schlitz load of stouts.
That wall ends at C. Oh yeah, it keeps going.
There's another room.
It keeps going.
Sure, the collection is impressive, but so is the presentation.
It's the only way to keep track of it. Alphabetical, chronological, by brand and brewery.
And when he ran out of wall space, he went to the rafters.
Everything's on wheels.
And then roll around racks. Joe says he has a can from every state in the union.
Oh yeah, definitely.
From A1 to Zodiac, even all the Idaho cans.
Edge Brewing, McCall Brewing, Slanted Rock.
He can go from generic to almost there to novelty TV cans.
Let's see, JR.
Even the every collector has to have Billy beer.
Yes.
The first beer can? Yeah, he's got that too.
Kruger's Cream Ale, that was the one that the can companies, they talked this brewery into trying this in 1935, and it was a tremendous success.
Kinda like Joe.
Yeah.
Since he started this quest for Metal Majesty back in the 70s.
Up until some that I added yesterday.
You added some yesterday?
Yeah, some brand new ones.
He admits he has a problem.
Yeah, but it's manageable at this time.
Joe knows of no one else in Idaho with this kind of collection.
I think I can probably claim that title, but I don't know if it's one to be proud of.
But there are thousands more around the country. They even have their own club and monthly magazine, of which Joe is the editor. Here they track auction prices of recent tin treasures.
That can sold for $37,000. That one was $37,000. This one was $35,000.
Joe also insists while all 11,000 of these vessels are vacant, he didn't drain them all.
I've had my fair share of them. I did. Can't you tell? I've had my fair share of them.
It said Colt 45 works every time, but Joe says he's worked about as many as he can into this old barn.
I'm done now. This is it.
This is not going to get bigger.
This is it. My goldfish bowl can't get any bigger.
A bowl, Joe says, is only worth its weight in aluminum, but if measured in memories, priceless.
There's a story behind every one of these.
And the story goes, at least it went this way when we spoke with Joe back in 2018, he was going to start paring down his collection since his kids don't really have an interest in it. So has he? Not exactly.
Yeah, that's not going so good.
No?
They keep finding me.
Oh, do they?
I have reduced the quantity a little bit, but no, it's not working out real well yet. But that's the plan for the future. Yes.
The future, the distant future.
Yeah.
But there is a big community of beer can aficionados out there.
Oh yes, it's huge. There's 3 national organizations: the Brewery Collectibles Club of America, which we put out this magazine. I happen to be the national editor right now. Probably total collectors are somewhere around 10,000.
Suffice to say, you're going to keep going with this, right?
I am for a while.
Okay.
Yes. I think the reduction plan is still fully in effect, and so someday I do hope to reduce that down, because there's only so many of these that'll fit in my urn with me at some point in time.
They don't break down very easily. Not as easily as that. Yeah, exactly.
Well, the old ones rust away.
That's true. That's true. All right. Well, happy Beer Can Appreciation Day.
You too. I will be appreciating that cylindrical device a little bit later this afternoon.
Good plan. Like many others will, I'm sure.
Yep.
Who don't even know what day it is.
That's right.
Nor does it matter. Joe says he tried to upgrade his collection in quality, not necessarily in quantity over the years, trading 100 or so here and there for one good specimen, but then trading one of his good specimens for hundreds of others. So, which is why his brewery-in collection, as he calls it, is still hovering around 11,000 cans. At least that's what he tells his wife. Our final moments of the show. We got a lot of text messages about the Red Cross and blood donations, about people being turned away, maybe not having an appointment or not accepting blood because of homosexuality. We're going to look into that, and hopefully we'll get into that one of these days this week. So stay tuned for that. I wanted to follow up with this one. We got a message last week from a 12-year-old Colby who sent me a message that said, "My dad and I watch your show when he gets home from work. He doesn't really like you, but I think you're cool. Wonder why he still watches your show. Must secretly like you," says Colby. Well, Colby's dad responded today after I commented on that last week to say this: "To follow up and be fair with my daughter's comment last week that I don't like you, I just don't agree with you 74% of the time. I'm just too lazy to switch a channel after watching Judge Judy," which he agrees with 99% of the time. "Keep being you. I think at times you make puddles in the oceans and crumbs into banquets. Other than like you, I like you 26% of the time. Let's go for 30.